Welcome back once again to the Graduate Show. Now, I must confess that I'm at a loss in this week's show. I have no idea how I intend to end it, or for that matter, how it should start. And the middle's a bit hazy too. But I can guarantee there is at least one joke hidden away in there, so keep your everything's peeled for that one. Now, I usually like to start each week with a humorous and light-hearted look at this day in history. A joke, if you will. This week, lots of stuff happened, but both past and present, none of it was amusing. As a disclaimer, I've been asked to point out by the producers that although this show makes jokes at the government's expense, because it really is too easy to get angry at all of the party leaders, we do not in any way support the riots conducted by dickless individuals on the streets of London over the weekend. Now, with that in mind, enjoy the show. Since we started this show just 9 weeks ago, my fame has risen and I have gained this reputation for being the nose-to-the-ground, no-nonsense attack dog for TGS. And this week I have had countless, well, 3, but countless people asking me to explain some of the difficult political decisions behind the UN's involvement in Libya and decipher some of the technical jargon and lingo used. Well, to tell the truth, I haven't the foggiest clue what's going on, but I do know somebody who might just be able to answer these questions. I've written a letter, which I'll now read to you.
To whom it may concern, how are you? I'm very confused by the current situation in Libya. We are at war, but technically we're not really at war. It's a no-fly zone, so no military flights are allowed. No military flights, except our planes, which seem free to fly around as they please and exercise the full might of their military muscle. It also seems apparent that there is no international coordination, organisation, strategy, or any clear leader of these operations. What is going on? Yours, on behalf of the Graduate Show and viewers, Jacob J. Daly.
And this was the reply I received.
Dear Mr. Daly, thank you so much for your charming letter. We're doing well, thanks. Just got a new budget, which is always exciting and keeps us busy, so can't complain. Blah 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 blah. To clarify, this is a no-fly zone, so is a peaceful alternative to military action, fighting that takes place during a war, fighting to go to war or engage in armed conflict. Conflict, military warfare between opposing forces, especially prolonged and bitter, but sporadic engagements. Engagement, a battle of warfare. Battle, a hostile encounter involving military forces during war. Hostilities, acts of overt warfare. War, a period of hostile relations that leads to conflict, fighting between armed forces or military action on land, sea or air. See, I hope this helps explain some of the complications. Speak to you soon, hugs and kisses, lots of love, Nikki and David, crossed out. David Cameron PM. Dave Cameron's okay.
Well, that clarifies everything. And there was me thinking that war was just a Geordie exclamation of shock. Just goes to show. Perhaps buoyed somewhat by the success of my first letter, I decided to send a replying second correspondent in an attempt to gain further insight.
Dear Nicholas and David, thank you so much for your speedy reply. The weather's been lovely here. Went for a walk in the park at the weekend, which was a delightful break from the city. Oh, that's not really important. In response to your personal problem, I have some ointment you may find useful, but I suggest abstaining from that sort of physical exertion for a while. Oh no, this is the bit. However apt the cause, however cruel the dictator, can you justify this extreme use of violence and bomb-dropping destruction in the name of peace? Surely there must be other possibilities. What steps and measures are being used to ensure that the mistakes of Iraq and Afghanistan will not be repeated? Will the country be successfully rebuilt after you topple the Gaddafi regime, or left, festering contempt and hatred, to stew in the violence of lawless poverty, as is the case in your other successful recent military campaigns? Yours, etc., Jacob. P.S. How do you sleep at night?
To this, I didn't get a reply. That's Libya all done and sorted, so now it's UK news, and a brand new section that we're going to call What's George Osborne Doing Now? This week, George Osborne has been spotted outside number 10 with a red briefcase, meaning he's either moving back in with Sharon and Ozzy, or it was time for his first budget as Chancellor. And folks, it may be unprofessional, but I'm going to go out on a limb and call Mr. Osborne a great big fat liar. He and the rest of the condemned coalition promised that this budget was going to be a plan for growth, yet we saw no free high heels for midgets or the compulsory injection of miracle growth for the under 5s. And furthermore, he had to admit that growth this year would be just 1.7%, much lower than the 2.1% expected. Now, he also admitted that these slower growth would result in an extra £45 billion borrowing between now and 2015, something which Mr Osborne blames the inheritance of Labour government's debt and the heavy snowfall last December. Now this, I actually agree with George. It's like the time that I had to take out a second loan to pay back my first loan, which I'd spent on the new spinning gold rims for my bicycle, which I had to buy because I'd sold my car to save money while I was on a prolonged holiday last December because of the snow. The biggest surprise of this year's budget was the £2 billion windfall tax on the North Sea oil companies, which was especially surprising, as Mr Osborne just last year was adamant that we should not treat the North Sea as a cash cow. But unlike the other lies, this is in fact a strategic U-turn on behalf of George Osborne, who has finally realised that if we don't milk this cash cow for all that it's worth, the Scottish eventually will, and then they'll probably fry it. The fact is, the coalition's plan isn't working. If it were, we'd be starting to see the signs by now, instead of these lies and U-turns. But nevertheless, the government and George Osborne seem seemingly hell-bent on sticking to the plan. And for now, the UK is caught between a Chancellor who insists that his policies are perfect, and a Shadow Chancellor, Ed Balls, who insists that policy was perfect under Labour. Somebody there has to be wrong. And it all came to a head this weekend, with 250,000 people marching through the streets of London calling for stops to cuts, some legitimately reasonable union types, and some, well, not so reasonable, such as the Socialist Workers' Party, who had the inspiring poster, "Follow Egypt, bring down the government, 26th of March. Idiots." Oh, I should just clarify, I'm not saying idiots on the poster, that was my response to the poster. Now, the main march through London, past Parliament Square and finishing in Hyde Park, went surprisingly well. But according to the news, the trouble started as groups splintered off, with anarchists intent on causing destruction. Firstly, I would like to point out that there is a difference between anarchy and hooliganism. And secondly, that this is not when the trouble started. It's been a hot pot of anger simmering away for months now, taking any given opportunity to boil over. And that's the problem. People are furious, directionless, solutionless, leaderless, and furious. None of this is helped by the fact that Ed Miliband is acting like nothing more than a placard-wielding schoolboy. Ask him any question you like and you'll get the same response. I told David not to do it. Hooray! Well done, Ed. You're supposed to be standing up for the workers, but as leader of the opposition, you need to make some alternative suggestions and not just join in the mindless chanting inside Fortnum and Mason. Now, no wonder you see even rational, peaceful people marching through the streets with these informative banners reading "Stop the cuts." What, all of the cuts? I mean, that seems a bit rash. I mean, surely we're all agreed that some cuts should be made, otherwise you just keep wasting money at the current rate and we'd end up like Portugal. No public sector cuts, others say. It's more sensible, but no public sector cuts? I don't like getting rid of the libraries any more than the next man. But what about MPs' expenses? Are they not public sector? Should we continue to finance them in this manner? And all these people are causing destruction on the streets. What message do they want the coalition government to take from this weekend's march? I know it's not catchy, but I would like to see more people marching through London with placards that at least show a basic level of knowledge on the subject. Placards that perhaps could read thus.
No ifs, no buts, moderate, appropriate and considered cuts that do not target public sector workers but are rational, suitable and designed to reduce money squandering rather than the futile gestures of cuts towards funding and national health, which save trifling pittance in comparison to the vast amounts of money involved in banking or, say, operating a war. When do we want it possibly phased in gradually over the next few years or so as to reduce the damage with long-term benefits rather than greedy politicians who are only interested in their term of power and re-election, resulting in the sudden sharp jolt which will inevitably lead to anger, which will subsequently spill over to the violence that we see with the riots on the streets?
Good night.